Democrats going absolutely ballistic after getting just a small sample of the border crisis. President Biden and blue states ramping up their attacks against Republican governors who've been relocating migrants to proud sanctuary enclaves. Ron DeSantis sending 2 flights of migrants to Obama's favorite vacation spot, Martha's Vineyard. Massachusetts Democrats already calling that a humanitarian crisis, and it's only 50 people. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott dropping off busloads of immigrants right at Kamala's doorstep after she declared the border secure. The president is accusing Republicans of using those asylum seekers as political props, while others go even further.
Instead of working with us on solutions, Republicans are playing politics with human beings, using them as props.
Abbott and DeSantis are doing today in the legacy of segregationists, playing politics with people's lives.
These are the kinds of tactics we see from smugglers in places like Mexico and Guatemala.
Some politicians would rather not only have an issue, but exacerbate it to the extent of literally human trafficking, as you said.
The White House and blue governors scrambling over what to do. Biden is mulling a potential legal response, while others are calling for bolder action like kidnapping charges. But Ron DeSantis is punching back.
The governor of California sent a letter to the Department of Justice saying you need to prosecute Texas and Florida governors. And all I can say is I think his hair gel is interfering with his brain function.
And the media is losing their cool.
Coming straight out of the authoritarian playbook. This is what's so disturbing about DeSantis, is to use human beings, to weaponize human beings for a political purpose.
We can work it out, but if you're going to be a bonehead, who wants to play with you?
Exploiting and abusing human beings, men, women, and children, to score cheap political points on immigration.
Leaving some migrants who might have been misled to believe they were going elsewhere, as reported by NPR, on a literal island that doesn't have any infrastructure designed to help them at all. In a word, it's inhumane.
People that are saying that these children and these families are being used as political pawns are exactly right.
You know, I got to tell you, Tyrus, the whole concept of the left and the media talking and calling this, you know, the legacy of segregation, the tactics of smuggling, when the president has been allowing these people in for the last year and 10 months, 9 months, about 2 million so far, 900 flights into the interior of the United States. Why is it segregation, and why is this all about smuggling when a Republican governor moves 50 people around, but you move in 1 million here and there and that's no problem?
Well, let's take the million off. Let's just go with the moving people. We didn't start that party. It was being done by President Biden's administration. They were having, except they did it at night. They did the little midnight flights. They were getting red eyes. We can't, to go from the border to North Carolina to all over the country. Those were Democrats flying those planes, or that was their idea, on much bigger numbers. And they were trying to hide it from the American people. So that is fine, but sending people to sanctuary cities. Now, I'm not a rocket surgeon, but I did attend a junior college. Sanctuary means safe place, right? That means you're welcome everyone. So wouldn't it make sense if I was seeking asylum and I showed up at the border and said, we're going to send you to a sanctuary city? I'd be like, that sounds pretty good. So I'm failing to see where the kidnapping is. Plus, as we talked about before, when you're kidnapped, usually when you get a picture taken, you're not like this.
You don't have a new backpack.
You don't hop out going, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, that's not how kidnapping typically works.
You know, Katie, aside from the legal issue, what the Democrats are now trying to sell, and the mainstream media, is that these people are not voluntarily going there. That the 50 or 80 people who've been moved around, who then are moved out of Martha's Vineyard in a moment's time to Cape Cod, moved out of Chicago to the area, to the county next to Chicago. I mean, that's okay.
It's amazing. Yeah, the White House continues to try and pin this on tactics that Republican governors are using by taking people the administration let walk right over the border, process through the federal system, and then getting on a bus of their choice to go wherever they want. This time they sent them to Martha's Vineyard. These are tactics that the Biden administration has been using for a year and a half. And now all of a sudden, Republican governors bring this out into the daytime, into the daylight, to Democratic sanctuary cities where they have signs in their yards that say hate has no home here, everybody is welcome, and no human is illegal. And yet less than 48 hours after 50 illegal immigrants land on Martha's Vineyard, they are deported to a military installation because they don't have the infrastructure. Now, that is true. They don't have the infrastructure. But when you listen to these media types, these anchors, these analysts, Democrats, the White House talk about how they were shipped off to an island that didn't have anything for them, meaning health care, resources, infrastructure. Well, are they entitled to that? Are they entitled to come to a place where the American people are supposed to just have this infrastructure available to them wherever they may want to go? The Biden administration has allowed 2 million people to come into the country, go to towns that are not necessarily Democratic sanctuary cities, and that burden has been placed on the American people, and someone's paying for it. So the reality of resources versus the moral preening we've seen from the left on this issue is smacking them right in the face, and it's looking pretty elitist considering when it happens at Martha's Vineyard, they're now concerned about the human trafficking involved when they haven't been involved or concerned about the trillion-dollar industry they've enabled from South America through Mexico with the cartels, making billions of dollars on human commodities for a year and a half.
Joey, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot blasted the migrant buses that Governor Abbott sent from Texas and the move as a racist move. And then she immediately moved these people out of Chicago. There are those who might say that the move and the movement of those individuals out of Martha's Vineyard is a racist move.
Well, think about what they're saying. What they're saying is these people belong in Arizona and Texas because that is where a majority of Spanish-speaking South American or Central American migrants already are. So they're taking exception with the idea of spread loading that burden, and it is an absolute burden on this country of immigrants that are mostly illegal, some are asylum seekers, spread loading that to other states and other places like Martha's Vineyard. Now, listen, I don't have anything for or against Martha's Vineyard, but I went to school at Georgetown, right outside D.C. or right inside D.C., and you know what those really affluent white liberals do? They make sure that public transportation never comes there because they don't want the riffraff that comes with it. Now, they'll stand literally on a hill and pontificate and advocate for those that are less fortunate, but don't you dare bring that to Georgetown. I've experienced this myself. I got told, go back to the country where you belong because I had the audacity to drive a truck in Georgetown. I know who these people are. I also know what the towns deal with. You go to Dalton, Georgia, you go down Underwood Road, you look to the right, just as you take a sweeping left turn, there's a trailer park there that the cops don't go to because there's no one there that speaks English. It is a city of its own because it is overran and stacked on top of each other. That's where people have moved to that have come here illegally. There's communities that have neighborhoods like that all over the country. If you want to talk about racism, don't tell people they belong in Texas because that's where other brown people are. That's what's racist. Listen, either this country is going to fix its immigration system or we're going to keep having this conversation over and over again.
All right.
I think we should fix it.
All right, Geraldo, the Democrats have the House, they have the Senate, they have the Oval. We've got the highest immigration we have seen in the history of this country. Donald Trump brought illegal crossings to a 40-year low. So now we've got people dying to get here, 800 bodies apparently in the last year. Isn't it incumbent upon this president to try to make sure that these people don't die coming here? To do something?
First of all, Judge, I have to say, and I say this with the deepest respect for the people on this panel, I love every one of you, but this was a wicked, clever, shameless, sleazy exploitation of these people.
Absolutely.
Bringing these people. Why didn't, if DeSantis really cared about them, he could have flown them to Joint Base Cape Cod where they ended up anyway, rather than using these human beings as a prop defame Martha's Vineyard or to expose Martha's Vineyard's elitism. It gave satisfaction to people at the expense of those who were transported. I really think that it was wicked clever, no doubt about it. We're all talking about it. The whole world is talking about it, Judge. But this was low. I mean, this is Charlie Baker, the governor of Massachusetts, is a Republican. This is, if we don't see what DeSantis is doing here is playing with our emotions, then we are naive.
But at what point does the administration actually deal with this overrun border that we have?
Question.
And if these people are not willing to deal with it, we have to put it in front of them.
But you don't use humans.
How do you do it? Go talk to them? They're not listening. They're lying.
Why can't a Republican?
They're saying the border's open. It's
why
not
can't a
secure.
Republican congressman and a Democratic congressman get together and make a plan?
Why don't the Democrats resolve it? They've got the power.
Every time, with all due respect, Governor DeSantis and Abbott are not in Congress. They're in charge of taking care of their state. You started your statement with, if he really cared about them. I don't know that he cares about illegal migrants more than he cares about Floridians. I hope he doesn't.